Hello and welcome to this Gcse English video lesson. Okay, so this is lesson 5 of the first term. Okay, so let's get started. So today's lesson is continuing the reading. So we're going on to the how question for paper 1 reading. So main aim is to analyse how a writer makes a text exciting. We're going to be doing some work on identifying the use of senses in a text, be able to identify the use of similes, personification, and it's also this is also to help with your writing tasks as well. So although it's focusing on the reading exam, some of the ideas we'll be discussing today, hopefully you can incorporate them into your writing to help make your writing a little bit more interesting and exciting. Like I said, the main aim is to look at how to answer that how question using an example from a couple of different texts. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to do this thing of word of the week. So just very quickly, I want you to think, what does this word mean? Visceral. Okay, it's an adjective, and so that's our word of the week, visceral. So pause the video and then just try and think what it might mean. Okay. So, main meaning of the word is to have a strong emotional or physical reaction to something. So, visceral refers to your feelings, but it's not a kind of a intellectual response or a thoughtful response. It's like an emotional or physical reaction to something. Okay, it's normally negative. Okay, but you know it can be positive. But normally we talk about a negative meaning. Okay, so an example of this is it created a visceral thrill that carries you along through the film's 2 hours. So here the idea is that the film is so exciting that you have a physical reaction to it. So it might be the sort of thing, so you know your heart starts racing, you get goosebumps, that sort of thing. Okay, so visceral, because we'll be referring back to it later in the lesson as well. Okay, so what I want you to do is very quickly think for 1 or 2 minutes what makes a film or a book exciting. Okay, so everyone likes reading or watching something exciting, not just boring. Okay, so just pause and think what makes a film or a book exciting. Okay, so try and think of at least 3 factors which can make a book or film exciting. Okay, so you might have some things like action, danger, suspense, building up of tension, that sort of thing. So these are the sorts of things that we're going to look at in today's lesson. Like I said, the idea of how to make your writing exciting and how writers make work exciting. So, like I said, so we're still focusing on the paper 1 reading, and it's the how question. So last week you would have looked at questions 1 and 2. Fairly straightforward question 1 and the impressions question, question 2, which can sometimes be question 3. So the how question is like the main focus of the paper 1 reading. So it's like it says here, so it's normally questions 3 and 4. Okay, so remember there's 5 questions in paper 1 reading, so half the marks are on this type of how question. And the main focus is testing your ability to identify a writer's technique, how they create a feeling, how they create an emotion, how they create a situation. Like I said, 10 marks is available for each question. So remember the paper is out of 40, so half the marks are on these how questions. So if you can do these questions well, these how questions, it's really going to help you in the exam. And also there are similar how questions in the paper 2 reading as well. So the techniques that you learn today not only will help you with this paper, they can inform your writing, it also helps you with paper 2 reading. So it's really key kind of technique and strategy to them. Okay. So what we're going to look at today is an extract from this book called Before the Fall. Okay, so hopefully if you got onto Moodle or your class file, I want you to read the extract. I'll bring it up in a moment, we can read it through together. So the extract we're going to read describes the moments immediately after a plane crash. Okay, and it's a really good example, I would say, of descriptive writing about a kind of shocking or dramatic incident. Okay, so like I said, although we're doing the reading exam, take a look at this extract because I think it's really useful to help you also think about your own writing for the exam. Okay, so this is the extract here. So I'll read it through. Oops, sorry, a bit big. Okay. So he surfaces shouting. It is night. The salt water burns his eyes. Heat singes his lungs. There is no moon, just a diffusion of moonlight through the burly fog, wave caps churning midnight blue in front of him. Around him, eerie orange flames lick the froth. The water is on fire, he thinks, kicking away instinctively. And then, after a moment of shock and disorientation, the plane has crashed. Scott thinks this, but not in words. In his brain are images and sounds. A sudden downward pitch, the panic stench of burning metal, screams. A woman bleeding from the head, broken glass glittering against her skin, and how everything that wasn't tied down seemed to float for an endless moment as time slowed. A wine bottle, a woman's purse, a little girl's iPhone, plates of food hovering in midair, spinning gently, entrees still in place, and then the screech of metal on metal, and the barrel roll of Scott's world ripping itself to pieces. A wave smacks him in the face, and he kicks his feet to try to get higher in the water. His shoes are dragging him down, so he loses them, then forces his way out of his salt-soaked chinos. He shivers in the cold Atlantic current, treading water, legs scissoring, arms pushing the ocean away in hard swirls. The waves are quilted with froth, not the hard triangle of children's drawings, but fractals of water, tiny waves stacking into larger ones. Out in the open water, they come at him from all directions, like a pack of wolves testing his defences. The dying fire animates them, giving them faces of sinister intent. Scott treads his way into a 360-degree turn. Around him he sees humps of jagged wreckage bobbing, pieces of fuselage, a stretch of wing. The floating gasoline has already dissipated or burned down. Soon everything will be dark. Fighting panic, Scott tries to assess the situation. The fact that it's August is in his favour. Right now the temperature of the Atlantic is maybe 65 degrees. Cold enough for hypothermia, but warm enough to give him time to reach shore, if that's possible, if he's even close. Okay. So, like I said, I want you to pause the video. And I just want you to read it through again in your own time. Take about 5 minutes. So, at this stage, we're just thinking about what makes a good example of dramatic writing. Okay, so we'll do the analysis later on. So I just want you to read it through again and just pick out maybe 3 or 4 ideas. What does the writer do well? What techniques does the writer use? How does he make it exciting and dramatic? So, like I said, pause the video for 5 minutes, longer if you need it, and then come back and we'll go through some ideas as to why it's a good piece of writing. Okay, so, like I said, as I said before, I think this is a really good piece of writing. I think it's actually a really interesting book. Excellent writer. So, I would say there's 5 key things that the writer does really well that helps make it exciting. Okay, so first of all, effective and unusual use of vocabulary. So I think there's some really good vocabulary in here. Okay, so some really kind of key ideas. It's not necessarily very challenging vocabulary, but he uses some really perceptive and descriptive words which kind of describe exactly what it would feel like to be in that situation. One main thing that he does is uses all the different senses, maybe apart from taste. Okay, there's a little bit of that, but mostly everything else. So, he uses lots of, what he can see, what he can hear, what he can touch, You know, and I think that that's really key to this extract as to how he uses those different senses to create that that feeling of drama. He also uses a couple of kind of writer's techniques. He uses a couple of similes. He also uses personification when describing the surroundings and the crash, which I think, again, really effective, which kind of links into the use of vocabulary and the use of the senses as well. And when I think one thing, again, you know, in terms of kind of narrative style, so although it's third person when he's describing Scott, I do think as a reader you feel like you are right there in the middle of the action. So we'll go over the way he does this. So I think it's really effective at making you feel as if you've just crashed and you're there stuck in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, one way he does this, he uses lots of short sentences. Okay, so your teacher might have spoken about this before, but one really effective way of kind of creating tension, creating drama, is use of short sentences to kind of focus the reader's attention and to make a certain idea stand out. So I would say that, you know, those are the different techniques that the writer, Noel Hawley, uses here to make this a really successful and descriptive piece of writing. Okay. So, in a moment, we've got a couple of tasks for you to do. So, just doing a very quick recap of some technical language. So, just here, so technical language is a bit problematic a little bit with GCSE English Language Exam. It's useful to be able to identify it, but it's not essential. So, if you do know what a particular technique is, then please do mention it in your writing. It will help you, but only if you're 100% certain it is that particular device. Okay, there's nothing worse than, as an examiner, kind of reading a piece of writing and they identify, they say it's a verb, it's an adjective. They say it's a simile when it's a metaphor. Okay, so if you know it, great, put it in, but it's not the most essential thing. Okay. However, having said that, like I said, you know, if you can put it in and you can talk about its effect, then it will help you get a higher level mark. Okay, so simile. This is a phrase that compares one item to another using the words like or as. So, very simple example. The water was as cold as ice. Okay. Personification is when you describe an object. Could be a weather, could be a thing, anything as if it has human characteristics or feelings. Okay, so often it's used when just talking about the weather. Again, in your writing, can be really effective technique. So example here, this is taken from the extract you just read. Eerie orange flames lick the froth. So obviously flames themselves don't lick, you know, they don't have a tongue, but creates that image, that visual image of these flames kind of like almost like over everything, licking, you know, sort of spurting out, that type of thing. Okay, so other thing quickly, like I mentioned before, is the senses. So again thinking about your writing, but also looking for this. So the senses there are 5 senses. So you've got touch, taste, smell, hearing and sight. And again, a good writer, okay, will use these different senses in their writing and their descriptive writing, because it can be really effective at creating very kind of dramatic imagery or visceral, as we talked about before, creating a visceral image of what you're trying to communicate. Okay, so like I said, and it also helps with giving that sensation of being in the story. So in the extract we've just read, like I said, one thing the writer does really well is that creates that sensation of you being like the character Scott, stuck in the middle of the ocean. And one way he does that is by really strong emphasis on the different senses. Okay. So if we go back to the text, okay. So if you look at the second page, there are a load of different questions there on. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Load of different questions there on how the text uses language to communicate meaning to the reader. So what I want you to do here, so let me bring it up, and here we go. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions there. Okay, so the first one is about, like we said, the right use is not essential, as in focus on the essential senses language. Find an example of each of the senses. It's not really a taste, there's one which is sort of, it's more touch, and I just want you to describe the effect of each one. Okay, and then, like we said, personification. Again, find 2 examples of personification in the text. Find the example of a simile. Again, what is the effect? Okay, so for all of these, it's great that first stage is being able to identify it, but what is more important is being able to talk about the effect. Yeah, why has the writer used that? How does it work? Okay, just saying the writer uses personification won't get you any marks. If you say uses personification such as da 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 da, this creates the idea that the fire is alive and has evil intent, makes it more dramatic, and so on. That will get you the mark. Okay, so again, pause the video here. Okay, so short sentences or fragments. Again, identify 1 or 2 examples of those short sentences. And the last one is, like I said, it's lots of different vocabulary. So just find a couple of new examples that will be different for everybody of what the word means. Again, widening your vocabulary range. So pause the video here. Take probably about 15 minutes. Go through, see if you can find examples of each of those. And like I said, key thing is talking what is the effect. That's what we're interested in. Okay, so pause the video. When you're finished, come back to it. Okay, so hopefully you've got all that. Now, one thing to say is, obviously, there are lots of different examples. So the ones that I've picked out might be slightly different from yours. So, don't worry if the example that I've got, you've got a different one, as long as it is the right kind of sense or the right kind of thing. Okay, but like I said, let's think about the effect of it. Okay, so the example I've got for touch was the salt water burns his eyes. Okay, so again, so it's not touch as in putting your hand on something, but it's that sense of what the salt water feels like on his eyes. Yeah. Okay, so I think the word, the writer using the words burns here emphasises the pain that the character is experiencing. And again, so as you read that sentence, you can imagine, I'm sure you've all kind of swum in the sea at sandbanks or wherever. You can know when you maybe swallow too much salt water or it gets in your eyes, that kind of tingling, sharp sensation. So again, it's effective at bringing that idea up for you. Okay, so here, for the smell, the panic stench of burning metal. Okay, so again, I think this is a really clever description. There's actually also a little personification there. So you've got burning metal. Okay, so stench, the word stench, first of all, and that means like a really strong, often awful smell. Burning metal, for metal to be burning implies that it must be, very, very strong fire. And also by describing the stench as panicked. Okay, so he's saying that even the smell is scared. The panic, that can either refer to the character or the smell is scared due to the effect of the crash. Like I said, that's a bit of crossover with personification as well. Sight, a woman bleeding from the head. So lots and lots of sight here. Okay, so there's some quite a simple image in a way, but it certainly emphasises the violence that the character Scott has seen. Okay, and then sound, so the screech of metal on metal. Okay, so again, the word screech, there's a little bit of onomatopoeia here. Remember, onomatopoeia is when the sound sounds like the sound it's describing, like bang, crash. So screech is one of those. Again, screech is quite a harsh sound, so it emphasises, you can imagine the sound that he has heard, during the plane crash. Okay, so like I say, those are just 4 examples of lots of different senses in the text, but like I said, it's the focus on what the effect is, not just identifying it as touch, smell, sight, etc. Okay, so personification. Again, there's a couple there. So I've got a wave smacks him in the face. Eerie orange flames lick the froth. Okay, so again, so first one, a wave smacks him in the face. I haven't written it here, but I'll just talk through it. Okay, so obviously smack, it has good connotations of violence. Someone punches somebody, somebody smacks him, so it implies that the waves are deliberately targeting him. Yeah, they are punching him, inflicting violence on him. And eerie orange flames lit the froth. So we did mention this one before, but again, I think it, just to repeat myself, it implies that the flames are, they're alive. They're licking, they're tasting, they're trying to eat, almost like they're trying to eat the sea. That's how dangerous they are. And also the word eerie, which you might have come across before. So eerie is sort of scary, spooky. Again, just emphasizes again, reinforces the sense of danger and drama. Okay, so similarly, just a couple of similes here. So here he's talking about the waves, like a pack of wolves testing his defences. Okay, so there he's comparing the waves to the wolves. So here you need to think about the connotation of wolves. So wolves, a pack of, it's not just one wolf, it's a pack of wolves. So that changes the focus of the sentence. So that implies that, they're hunting, they're trying to attack him, they're testing his defences. It's like they have a mind of their own. Okay, so that combined with the idea of the wave smacking him in the face, again creates a sense that he's really under threat. Very dramatic. He's under threat, being attacked by these waves surrounding him, trying to kill him. Okay, and the last point, short sentences or fragments. So again, as I said, he uses a number of short sentences throughout the text. So this is from the very first lines of the book, of the extract. So he surfaces shouting, new sentence. It is night, new sentence. The salt water burns his eyes, new sentence. Heat singes his limbs, new sentence. So again, so 4 very short sentences there, very simple, 4 simple sentences, again, one after another, have the effect of kind of focusing your attention as the reader on what is happening. So it's his services shouting, it is night. Yeah. So again, it's that sense of kind of mystery. That unasked question. So, where is he surfaced from? Why is it night time? Why is he in the middle of the sea? Where does this heat come from? Okay, so I think those 4 simple sentences, moving you around, focusing your attention as the reader. By the end of it, you've realised something really terrible has happened. You don't know what yet, but it builds up that sense of drama really effectively. Okay, and like I said, the last one, obviously, so that would be up to you. Hopefully you found at least a couple of words that are new to you so you can help broaden your vocabulary. Okay, so that's the task for that one. So what we're going to look at now is how to answer the how question. So like I said before, the how question is really key question for the reading, both for paper 1 and paper 2. Okay, so this is the question. How does the writer make this section exciting for the reader? So, like I said, so it's 10 marks available. So you need to aim for at least 6 quotations. Now, it's not as straightforward as saying 1 quotation equals 1 mark, but it's roughly true. So the more relevant, which is key with quotations, you can get in your answer and your response, and you can write about them, the more marks you will get. So for example, say you just have 1 quotation, but you write about it in a lot of detail, you won't get more than 1 or 2 marks. So this might be something which is different from what you were taught at school. So in the exam that we do, there's a real focus on being able to pick out lots of different examples of language. That's what the examiner is interested in. Yeah, it's not about 1 quotation in lots of detail, but about lots of different examples. So that's what we'll practice. Okay, so that's the first thing. So next thing, so at least 6 quotations, and you need to track your answers through the text, i.e. put your quotations in order. Okay, so again, this is something which is, the exam board really likes. So It's a very straightforward approach, really. I mean, it makes sense, you know. So the first quotation do you take from the first part of the text. Second quotation comes after the first one. The third one comes after the second one, and so on and so on. All it means is that you should cover the whole part of the text. Work your way down effectively, okay, from the start to the end, making sure your quotations are in order, and also make sure you get them from all of the text, not just one part of it. Like I said, use technical language if it's useful, but it's not essential. Okay, if you can identify it, great. If you can't, don't worry about it. Okay, so, but to get good marks, it's about good quality quotes, and they can be short as well. So a quote doesn't have to be 2 lines long. To be honest, it shouldn't be more than a line, or even just a few words. In a moment, I'll give you an example of how to approach it. Okay, and you should see that, you know, quotations, they don't need to be long at all. In some ways, the shorter, the better. Okay, and then it's a clear explanation. Okay, clear an explanation of how that quote links back to the question. So for here, it's all about how does the writer make this section exciting for the reader. So every quote you pick out needs to be something which makes it exciting, and your explanation needs to show how it makes that exciting. Okay. So here I've got an example of the beginning of my response to this question. Okay, so in this extract, the writer creates a very exciting and dramatic description of plane crash. The 2 first sentences, he surfaces shouting, "It is night," put us straight into the action. The short sentences grab our attention and force us to ask the question, what has happened? The writer then gives us more details by focusing on the sentences. The salt water burns his eyes, heat singes his lungs. This visceral description creates a dramatic picture of the character in physical danger. Okay. So, as you can see, so my quotations are quite short, okay, and they're also embedded. By that I mean they're in the description, okay. So the first sentence is just, you know, a little bit of a, just so I can show I know what I'm talking about, okay. And then for each quotation, I've said why it works, puts us into the action, force us to ask the question what has happened, which makes it dramatic. Okay, and then the salt water burns his eyes. So visceral, remember that word we looked at the very start of the lesson? Creates a dramatic picture of the character in physical danger. Okay, so I'm showing how the quotation, explain the quotation, shows how it links to the how question. Okay, and that's it. So there, I've already got 2-3 marks, got a couple of quotations, good bit of explanation. Do that a few more times, and then you can get 6, 7, 8 out of 10. And you do that for each of those how questions, those 10-mark questions, and you'll be easily on your way to passing. So what I want you to do now, okay, so pause this video. Okay, so take maybe 15 minutes. In the exam, you'd only have maybe about 10 minutes. Okay, but I think you need to take a little bit more time because there's quite a lot to do. So obviously we've gone through in quite a lot of detail. We've looked at the different types of language, the techniques. So you should have all the quotations that you need there. Remember what I said. So when you're answering it, like I said, at least 6 quotations. Track your answers through the text. Put your quotations in order. Use technical language if it's useful, but it's not essential at all. And remember, focus on good quality short quotations and a clear explanation of each quotation and how it links back to the question. Okay, so like I said, pause it for 15 minutes now, do that, and then we'll come back and we'll just do a little bit more practice of another text. Okay, so welcome back. So what we're going to look at, just set up the last reading task. So this one, I'm not going to go through in detail what you have to do, it's just about giving you more practice, but I just want to watch you this there. So this is from a book and a film called About a Boy. Quite an old film now, so you might have seen it. And what I want you to do, we're just going to watch the clip. Just want you to feel, think about how would you feel if this happened to you.
Marcus. I love you. I love you too.
Right, sorry that video seems to have stopped. Okay, but you hopefully get the idea. Having fun with my YouTube, you get the idea of what was going on there. Okay. Oh, it's back again.
I love you, Marcus. Love you. Love you. Gcse.
Okay, so despite the slightly funny video, hope you get an idea of what happened there. So, what we're going to read about is about this Marcus, the boy in the video clip we just watched. Okay, so I'll show you the root extract in a bit. Okay, so I want you to read the extract. So how does the writer show that the character Marcus is different from the other children in his school? Okay, so like I said, so the first example you did was how did he make it exciting? So, so that type of question, it might be about the technique, about how he creates a feeling. Sometimes the how questions are focusing on a character and how a writer creates a character, creates a sense of the character. So this one, like I said, is focusing on the character. So it's although it's the same approach, you need to think a little bit more carefully about what image is created of the character, what details do you learn about Marcus, from maybe how he's described, what he looks like, etc. But it's pretty much the same approach. So it's about tracking your answers through the text, at least 6 quotations, short quotation, simple explanation. Okay, so if I just bring the text up, so you know what you're looking at, bear with me. Okay, so it's not quite the same as the one you watched on the video or tried to watch, but it's a similar sort of feeling. Okay, so 12-year-old Marcus's mother and father separated 4 years ago. Marcus has recently moved from Cambridge to London with his mother. This is his second day at his new school. He has arrived early and gone to the form room to try and avoid some students that have been giving him a hard time. There were a couple of girls in the room, but they ignored him, unless the snort of laughter he heard while he was getting his reading book out had anything to do with him. What was there to laugh at? Not much, really, unless you were the kind of person who was on permanent lookout for something to laugh at. Unfortunately, that was exactly the kind of person most kids were in this experience. They patrolled up and down school corridors like sharks, except that what they were on the lookout for wasn't flesh but the wrong trousers, or the wrong haircut, or the wrong shoes, any or all of which sent them wild with excitement. As he was usually wearing the wrong shoes or the wrong trousers, and his haircut was wrong all the time, every day of the week, he didn't have to do very much to send them all demented. Marcus knew he was weird. I knew that part of the reason he was weird because his mum was weird. She just didn't get any of it. She was always telling him that only shallow people made judgments on the basis of clothes or hair. She didn't want him to watch rubbish television or listen to rubbish music or play rubbish computer games. She thought they were all rubbish. Which meant that if he wanted to do anything that any of the other kids spent their time doing, he had to argue with her for hours. He usually lost, and she was so good at arguing that he felt good about losing. She could explain why listening to Joni Mitchell and Bob Marley, who happened to be her 2 favourite singers, was much better for him than listening to Snoop Doggy Dogg, and why it was more important to read books than to play on the Game Boy his dad had given him. But he couldn't pass any of this on to the kids at school. If he tried to tell Lee Hartley, the biggest and loudest and nastiest of the kids he met yesterday, he didn't approve of Snoop Doggy Dogg because Snoop Doggy Dogg had a bad attitude to women, Lou Hartley would thump him, or call him something that he didn't want to be called. It wasn't so bad in Cambridge, because there were loads of kids who weren't right for school, and loads of mums who had made them that way. But in London, it was different. Okay. So, like I said, again, takes sort of 15 minutes. Like I said, the question is, how does the writer show that the character Marcus is different from the other children in his school? Okay, so work your way through. Read the text carefully, try to get your answers through, and good luck. And once you finish doing that task, then that's the end of the video. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and maybe talk to you again soon.